Everything you thought was stable in your life, it's all an illusion. Your relationships, your job, your sense of self, they aren't as solid as they seem. And if you've been feeling like your world is starting to shake, like something is pulling at the seams of your reality, you're not imagining it. The universe is pushing you hard. Because here's the truth. Awakening isn't gentle. It's not a peaceful meditation under a full moon. It's a demolition. A full-scale breakdown of everything you once believed. And if you're here, watching this, chances are you're in the middle of it. Welcome to Kundalini Awakens, where we uncover the truths of Kundalini and more. You're not going crazy. You're being called. But before you break through, you have to break down. The spiritual journey isn't about adding enlightenment to your life. It's about ripping apart the falsehoods you've been living under. Right now, you might feel lost. You might be questioning why things are happening to you, why relationships are crumbling, why you feel disconnected from everything you used to love, why life suddenly feels like an uphill battle with no end in sight. That's not an accident. That's the process. What if I told you that the universe isn't punishing you? It's preparing you. That the suffering, the chaos, the unbearable weight crushing you right now, it's actually a sign, a test, a final threshold before something bigger than you ever imagined. But most people don't make it past this point. They break. They retreat. They go back to their old lives, clinging to what's familiar, never realizing how close they were to something extraordinary. You won't be one of them. Stay with me until the end of this video, because by then, you'll understand exactly why this is happening to you, and more importantly, how to push through to the other side. You were never meant to stay comfortable. The life you built, the identity you've carefully crafted, it was always temporary. And now, the universe is tearing it down. At first, it feels like bad luck. A series of unfortunate events. Your relationships begin to strain. Your job feels suffocating. The things that once brought you joy now feel empty. It's subtle at first, like whispers in the dark. A creeping sense that something isn't right. But then, it escalates. The pressure builds. The cracks widen. And suddenly, everything collapses at once. A betrayal you never saw coming. A loss so deep it leaves you breathless. A moment of despair so intense, you wonder if you'll ever recover. This is not a coincidence. The universe does this with precision. It doesn't break you randomly. It strikes exactly where you are most attached. Because attachment is what keeps you asleep. You were holding onto an illusion, and now it's being ripped away. But here's the part most people don't understand. This is not destruction for the sake of pain. This is controlled demolition. A sacred, calculated process. Your old self is being burned to the ground, not because you are being punished, but because you cannot carry that version of yourself into what comes next. Think about it. Every major transformation in nature is violent. The seed must crack open for the tree to grow. The caterpillar must dissolve into nothing before it becomes the butterfly. And you must be shattered before you can become something greater. But the real question is, will you let it happen, or will you resist? Most people fight it. They cling to their old lives, their old beliefs, their old selves. They try to glue the pieces back together instead of letting the fire finish its work. And that's when the suffering gets worse. Because the harder you hold on, the more the universe will force your hands open. You felt it, haven't you? That tightening grip. That desperate attempt to hold on to what's slipping away. But deep down, you already know. It's time to let go. Because what's waiting on the other side of this breaking point is not destruction. It's rebirth. But before you get there, before the rebirth, you have to face the part that no one talks about. The free fall. This is where most people break. Because once the universe strips everything away, there's a moment, a terrifying, gut-wrenching moment, where you have absolutely nothing to hold on to. No old identity, no distractions, no safety net. Just you and the void. This is the part where people beg for their old life back. They think, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have held on. Maybe this is just too much. And the universe, it stays silent. It doesn't comfort you. It doesn't give you answers. It lets you sit in that emptiness. Because this is the test. Will you crumble, or will you step into the unknown? Most people fail right here. They run back to their old patterns, their old toxic relationships, their old habits, because even misery feels safer than the unknown. They convince themselves that spiritual awakening isn't real, that it was just a phase, that the signs weren't really signs, that the universe isn't actually speaking to them. And just like that, they fall back asleep. But you're still here. You haven't turned away. And that means something. Because if you're still listening, if you're still searching, if you're still questioning, then the awakening hasn't given up on you. The universe is still pulling you forward. But there's something you need to understand. This isn't about waiting for a sign. This isn't about hoping things will get better on their own. Do you trust the process, even when there's no proof? Do you move forward, even when everything in you is screaming to turn back? Because right after the breaking point, right after the free fall, comes the moment that changes everything. And most people never get there. But you will. Because what happens next is where everything shifts. The moment you stop resisting. The moment you stop grasping for the life that was already burning away. The moment you surrender, not in defeat, but in trust. That's when the energy changes. Because up until now, you've been fighting the process. You've been trying to hold yourself together, patch the wounds, rebuild the crumbling foundation. But you were never meant to stay the same. The universe doesn't want the version of you that begs to fit inside the old mold. It wants the version that is willing to dissolve and become something unrecognizable. But let's be clear, surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means stopping the fight against the inevitable. It means stepping into the unknown with eyes wide open, even when you don't know what's on the other side. And this is when something almost supernatural happens. The very things that were crumbling, the relationships, the opportunities, the sense of self you thought you lost, start to be replaced with something completely new. At first, it's small. A conversation that sparks a new perspective. An opportunity that seems to come out of nowhere. A realization that you no longer react to old triggers the way you used to. And then, the momentum builds. You start seeing patterns. The synchronicities return, but this time, they're clearer. The things you used to chase, they start chasing you. Because here's the truth. The universe was never against you. It was never breaking you just to watch you suffer. It was breaking you open so you could receive something greater. But that greater version of your life was never going to fit inside the old one. That's why everything had to collapse first. Now, you're stepping into the space where magic happens. Where you are no longer the person who desperately holds on to what's familiar, but the one who trusts the flow of what's coming. This is the part most people never experience. Because they give up too soon. They turn back when the pain gets unbearable, never realizing how close they were to the breakthrough. You're different. And what happens next is going to prove it. But before that transformation fully takes hold, there's one last thing you need to understand. The universe will test you. Not because it's cruel. Not because it wants to see you suffer. But because it needs to know, do you really mean it? Do you really want this new life? Or are you just hoping for a temporary escape from your pain? This is where most people fail the final test. Because after the chaos, after the free fall, after they finally let go, The universe sends one last storm. An old temptation. A familiar struggle. A chance to step back into the past, disguised as an opportunity. You'll feel it. The pull of the old world, whispering, maybe things weren't that bad. Maybe I can go back, just for a little while. But make no mistake, this is the universe asking you, have you really changed? Because if you take the bait, if you go back to the old patterns, the old relationships, the old mindset, you won't just be stuck, you'll be dragged back deeper than before. And next time, it'll be even harder to break free. But if you resist, if you stand firm, if you trust the process, if you refuse to return to the version of yourself that was comfortable but caged, then everything shifts. The universe sees that you're ready. And that's when the breakthrough truly happens. Not in some grand explosion of light, not with fireworks or angelic voices, but in the simplest, most undeniable way. You wake up one morning and something feels different. The anxiety that ruled you, it's quieter. The doubts that used to paralyze you, they don't hold the same weight. The things that used to trigger you, they pass through you without reaction. You start moving through life differently, with certainty, with ease. And suddenly, the things that once seemed impossible, they start aligning effortlessly. Not because the universe changed, because you did. And the moment you fully realize that, the moment you embody the truth that you were never being punished, only prepared, that's when you step into the version of yourself you were always meant to be. That's when you become unstoppable. And that's when you finally see, this was never about breaking you. It was about making you unbreakable. And now, you understand. Everything that felt like suffering, it was actually sculpting you. Every loss, every betrayal, every moment where you thought you couldn't go on, it was all refining you into something stronger, something more awake, something untouchable by the things that once controlled you. This is why the universe pushed you to your limits. Because without breaking, you never would have let go. And without letting go, you never would have transformed. But here's what no one tells you. This isn't the end. Awakening isn't a destination. It's a beginning. Because now, the real work begins. You're no longer who you were. And that means you can't live the way you used to. You can't surround yourself with the same energy, engage in the same toxic cycles, or betray yourself the way you once did. You're different now. And because of that, your life will have to shift to match your new frequency. The people around you will feel it. Some will be drawn to your light, sensing the power in your presence. Others will resist, unsettled by the fact that you are no longer easy to control, no longer swayed by the things that once kept you small. But that's not your problem. You didn't go through hell just to dim your light for people who are afraid of growth. You didn't break through the illusion just to fit back inside it. You're here to build something new. A new way of thinking. A new way of living. A new way of being. And as you step forward, something incredible happens. You start to see how the universe was never against you. How every painful moment was actually clearing the path. How every loss was just making space for something greater. You realize that the universe never wanted to break you. It wanted to wake you up. And now, you are. So the question is, what are you going to do with this power? Because make no mistake, this is power. Not the kind the world teaches you. Not dominance. Not control. But something far greater. The power to see through illusion. To move through life with unshakable trust. To create instead of react. Most people will never experience this. They will stay in their cycles, convinced that life is just suffering, that they are victims of circumstance, that they have no choice. But you've seen behind the curtain. You know better now. And with that knowledge comes responsibility. You can't pretend anymore. You can't go back to playing small, to silencing yourself, to following a path that no longer fits. That life is over. So, what happens now? Now, you start walking the path of the awakened. It won't always be easy. There will be days when you miss the comfort of your old life. Moments when the weight of awareness feels too heavy. Times when you wonder if it would be simpler to just go back to sleep. But you won't. Because once you've woken up, there is no going back. The old world, the one you used to live in, no longer exists. And the one ahead of you, it's limitless. This is your moment. Not just to heal, not just to rise. Every moment of pain, every night you spent wondering why this was happening to you, it will all be clear. Because this was never happening to you. It was happening for you. You weren't being buried. You were being planted. And now, it's time to grow.